All right, so again, this is SAMJOKO magazine. My name is Todd Sullivan, and today I have with me Margie Stiles, who I actually met, I think, like 2 months ago at the AWC Atlanta Rise Club book signing that they had, and we got to chat for a bit. And I said that she had published a children's book called Am I We, which we're going to talk about today. And then I think last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't really know for sure, her second book came out, which is called Everett the Brave, which we're also going to talk about. But before we begin, I'm going to read the bio that Margie sent to me. And it begins like this. All right. So, Margie Stiles, a U.S. Navy veteran, served as an enlisted journalist, JO. She was trained in broadcast and print journalism at the Defense Information School at Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, and worked for Navy Broadcasting Service in Washington, D.C. as a broadcast reporter and editor for the televised newscast Navy News This Week. Margie earned a Master of Human Relations from the University of Oklahoma and retired from corporate America after 25 years in sales and leadership. She is the proud mother of two daughters, Addie and Mya. And actually, I met one of her daughters at a novel idea, I think, before Christmas. Margie is the author of Am I and Everett the Brave. And just really fast, I had a really good friend who actually was also a journalist in I don't know if it was the Navy, but it was the Army. He served in Iraq, within the Iraq War, and he actually ended up moving to Germany. So I actually think of him as I read this
Oh,
bio. So anyway, so okay, Margie Stiles. Before we begin with the questions, can you just say your name and then say the title of? I think you have two books you're going to read for. So
mhm,
then say the name of one book and then the name of another
mhm.
book, and just yeah, go ahead.
Sure, sure. Well, good morning, Todd. Great to see you. I will read an excerpt from Am I a Weed first, and just to kind of set it up for you, Philo is the main character pictured here, and Philo is a young Asclepias plant that's also known as a milkweed. And again, let me start over. I didn't say my name. So I'm Margie Stiles, and the first book that I'll be reading from is Am I a Weed? All right. One morning under the warm sun, Rosie the Rose teased and made fun of me. You're a weed. Weeds don't belong in the garden. I was sad and confused. Was Rosie the Rose right? Was I a weed? What if I didn't belong? I wasn't sure now. Want you to see these beautiful pictures? I went to Mama and told her what happened. Mama, Rosie the Rose said I'm a weed and I don't belong in the garden. Am I a weed? I asked. My sweet Philo, Mama replied, you are an Asclepias plant and you are so important to the garden. I have an incredible illustrator who is illustrating all the books in my series, so they all will have a consistent look and feel. This is a picture of your grandpa, Asclepius. I can still remember him teaching me about this, Mama said with excitement. So that is what I'll read from this book. And so Mama Asclepius goes on to tell Philo about all the amazing, incredible things that Philo does in the garden. Shall I move on to the next one?
Oh yeah, sure, go
All right,
ahead.
perfect. All right. So the second book, which just published in December, is Everett the Brave. And to set this one up for you, there are two bald eagles that have just had two new eaglets. All right. I'll let you see this picture real quick. Mama called out in excitement, Papa, our eggs are hatching. Papa hurried back to the nest to witness the birth of his eaglets. The first one inched out of its shell and lay there with wet feathers. It's a girl, Papa exclaimed. I want to name her Tilly. It means battle mighty. By the time Tilly's feathers dried, the other egg began to hatch. Mama and Papa couldn't wait to meet their second eaglet. This one was smaller and weaker. Mama had to help this one break free from its shell. Look, Papa, this one is a boy. I want to name him Everett. It means brave as a wild boar, Mama said. Everett is a fine name for a brave eagle, Papa said with pride. I love this picture. Papa immediately flew away to the lake to catch fish for the baby eaglets. Mama stood perched on the edge of the nest, watching her new eaglets begin to stretch and move around. Papa returned with a fish, and Mama carefully prepared it to feed the chicks. Tilly had a big appetite, but Everett was still adjusting to his new surroundings. Everett fell asleep while Tilly was feeding. As the days went on, Tilly ate more than he did. Although Tilly only hatched 2 hours before Everett, she was so much bigger. Everett wished he were as big as Tilly. She was so much stronger. Mama, why is Tilly so much bigger than I am? He inquired. Well, son, Tilly eats much better than you do. You need good nutrition to grow strong muscles, Mama said. The stronger you are, the braver you can be. Everett didn't feel strong or brave. Tilly was brave, so he watched her and he did everything she did. And that's the excerpt from Everett the Brave.
You know, it's really funny because over the Christmas holiday, my niece came to. I saw my niece.
Mm-hmm.
They live in Alabama, and one of the things we noticed is that how little she eats, and we're trying to always get her to eat. And as a
Yeah.
child, I myself was one of the kids who would be sat at the table because I wouldn't eat all my vegetables. And back in the day, this is what my mom did back in the day. She wouldn't let me get up from the table until I finished. So I would
Me either.
sit there for like an hour. Because I really didn't want to eat my vegetables. So that's really cool that you wrote a story about that, actually. That's actually pretty cool. So,
That's a cute story. I was stuck at the table too.
yeah, I think there were a lot of kids who were actually.
Yeah.
But actually, the first question is, what is your process of writing?
So my process of writing children's books is different than my process for writing novels. But of course, I'll focus on writing children's books. Um, so I didn't really think I had a prescribed formula for doing it, but when I thought about how I had created both of the first two books, it made me realize that there really kind of was a process that I was following intuitively. And the way that I do it is I start with the main character, something that, just stands out, something that I find interesting, whatever the case might be. And then when I find my main character, I look for some type of juxtaposition because I just love juxtaposition. I think it's a great way of, telling these stories about building confidence because that's really the overarching theme of my STEM series is building confidence. They are STEM books, so there are learning insights in the book. But really, they're about building confidence in children. And so, the juxtaposition, for example, with Am I a Weed was an important plant that's also known as a weed. And then my juxtaposition for Everett the Brave was an eagle that we assume eagles are brave, an eagle that isn't brave. So once I take a look at that. Then I look at researching the character. Sometimes during the research phase, I realize the character idea doesn't work and I have to scrap it and start all over. Because when I research it, I'm looking at things like where's the habitat for, is it a garden or a lake or a river and where are they located? Are they located in the US? And I look at the characters, all of the animals that this animal or plant are surrounded by or interact with. So they become the cast of characters so that we can, accurately depict that animal or plant in its real environment. And then I look at, once I've got the character and the supporting cast, then I look at what are some commonalities, or, maybe what do they not have in common. And that can sometimes help build the story. And then I look at the day of the life in that character so that I can, show it in its environment, and talk about the things that it does in its environment, and those become some of the learning insights. Once I've got all of that done, if the character is still hasn't been scrapped at this point because maybe the cast of characters aren't interesting enough, or whatever the case might be, maybe they don't have enough in common, or enough that's not in common, whatever reason could disqualify. But then if I'm still working on the character, it still, has some promise, then I look at the overarching message, and sometimes that kind of develops along the way as I'm selecting the characters. And then I write the manuscript. So the overarching message, for example, in Am I a Weed, is embracing our uniqueness and being proud of who we are just the way we are. Whereas the overarching message in Everett the Brave is that we all achieve our goals in our own time. And then the manuscript builds the story around all of that to, emphasize those learning insights and those confidence building points.
And for people who might not be familiar with it, when you say STEM, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by STEM is STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And so, from a learning perspective, these books could play a role in, an educator's environment.
Okay, and then when you write, so I guess it'd be kind of for me. I would think it's kind of a challenge because you have to make it engaging for like what is the age group for? What's the picture books? I'm guessing it's what pre-K, first grade, something like that.
Yeah, it's up to 6 years old. Everett the Brave is a little bit longer, so it could be up to 7 or 8, but basically 2 to 6.
Yeah, and so when you're trying to like make the book kind of relatable to kids, something engaging to kids, is there like a trick that you use?
Well, really, the trick is just putting myself back in those shoes, and thinking about when I was the age of my intended audience, and what kind of messaging did I need. And I needed confidence building messages. So I think that's why my focus has been on that.
Okay, and actually, I think you kind of answer the second question. What is MI We and Everett the Brave about? But do you want to add anything else?
Not really. I mean, just about, like I said, MI We is about embracing our uniqueness and being proud of who we are, understanding that we all have value. And, Everett the Brave is about building courage and just knowing that what you need to achieve your goals is inside of you.
And have these been kind of stories you've always wanted to write from like a long time ago, or did it kind of recently, like ideas you had like relatively recently?
So I'm sorry.
Oh,
Was
so have these like are these stories you had like an idea for this like years and years ago? Or they're like relatively recently you kind of thought about these ideas for these stories?
So I wrote Am I Weed back in 2023 because I like to garden, and I had purchased some Asclepias plants to plant in my garden, and I learned that they were the sole food source for monarch butterflies. So I just found that so interesting. And then when I found out that they were also known as milk weeds, it created that opportunity for the juxtaposition. But Everett the Brave started from an eagle sighting. I had no idea that we even had eagles in my area. And I was looking out of my window, and an eagle flew over my home, and it was so close to me that I could see the yellow in its eyes. And it just stayed in my head for the next week. And then before I knew it, I began writing the story.
And the next question, actually, you kind of answered it a bit. So I actually write a bit of children's fiction, not quite as young, but I do write a bit of children's fiction. And when I wrote, I was working at in Korean, it's called a yuchiwan, but it's
Mhm.
basically a kindergarten. It's basically like a
Mhm.
kindergarten, a pre-K, basically.
Mhm.
And I basically was using the kids that I met as kind of like the foundation for my characters themselves. So I'm actually curious, what tip would you give on how to write I guess a children's book?
So I touched on it a little bit. I think the starting point is figure out or remember what were some of the books that really resonated with you or the children's book author when they were the age of their intended audience. Find those books, reread them, remind yourself about why that messaging resonated with you, and start from there.
And actually, this goes into the last question. So, as a child, of course, my big book that I used to read was Dr. Seuss. And in Korea, Dr. Seuss is massive. I mean, the kids, I think it just transcends culture, it transcends race, transcends
Mm-hmm.
age, because people
Mm-hmm.
from my age, your age, like older, and then little kids, they all just love Dr. Seuss.
Mm-hmm.
So, besides Dr. Seuss, perhaps, can you name a children's book, a children's author that you feel was exemplary and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was about 5 years old, so this would have been in 1970, a book was published by Sarah Acheron called Frady Cat. And Sarah Acheron, turns out, is the pen name for Lillian Moore, who was an educator in the 1930s during the Great Depression. And she became a children's book author. And I found that book, like I said, when I was around 5 years old. I was a very timid child. And that book made me feel seen and made me feel okay. It was normal. It was okay to be timid. I have it right here.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love it.
Actually, I
Yeah,
think I've heard. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and the character here is a timid, unlikely hero, and so yeah, that has really probably been the biggest inspiration for me, because that really I connected to that, and like I said, it made me feel okay. It was like, all right,
Do
great,
you have a oh,
great
do
getting
you have a,
scared.
do you have another book already in mind that you plan on writing?
Yes, I do. I actually am working on my third book for the STEM series, and it is called Beaver Teeth, which just so happens to be my elementary school nickname that I did not like. Um, but I turned it into something beautiful. And so, this book that we'll publish sometime this summer is about positive self talk.
Okay. All right. And so before we go, do you want to give a shout out meaning to anyone, any organization, just anything at all? Do you want to give a shout out?
Yeah, I'd love to. I want to give a shout out to my publisher, Wordy. They're out of New York, New York, and they have published both of my books. They will be publishing my next children's book as well. And I do actually have a young adult novel in the wings, waiting in the wings. It's been approved, but we are working to complete the children's series first because, like I said, we do have an illustrator that is just incredible, and we are fortunate enough to have her doing the entire series. So we're just trying to focus on that while she's still available.
Okay. And for these particular interviews, I always want to give a shout out to the Atlantis Rise Club. This is actually how we both met, as I mentioned at the beginning of the
Yes.
interview. And so, yeah, definitely people who are in the Atlanta area, check out the Atlantis Rise Club. I think it's extremely helpful. So, again, Margie Stiles has been really great. I probably will see you again at one of the
Yes.
AWC monthly meetings. So,
Yes, for sure.
but for now, thank you. And I'm about to stop recording now.
Okay.